So every time I see Donald Trump come out and behave like a just a rude brute, like he did when he was talking to that reporter and called her a piggy, a pig. And I can't help but look at it and think, can you imagine Jack Kennedy talking like that to anyone? And then that gets me thinking about Kennedy and what a marvelous president was. And I heard that Chris Matthews wrote a book about Bobby Kennedy. But I was listening to him being interviewed, and he just mentioned that Jack Kennedy had an enormous approval rating. I think he said it was 68%. I believe at one time Kennedy was up over 90. He said, can you imagine Donald Trump having an approval rating like Kennedy? And part of the reason is because Kennedy was a decent person, and he liked people, and he treated them with decency and respect and kindness. And when you saw Kennedy, you saw a real person. You didn't see some clown jockeying around for position and trying to make people look bad so he could look good by comparison, which he never does. But it was and then that got me off thinking on another track. And those of you who know me know that sometimes I do that. But I try to always come back to where I was. But it got me thinking once more time about the Kennedy assassination. And I got to tell you, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. And I'm not going to elaborate on this. I'm keeping this short. But it is so disturbing to me when you trace the route that they took. And I've been to Dealey Plaza. I drove through there. I was shocked at the tiny little area where Kennedy was shot, where involved just making a quick right turn and then a quick left turn. And in that left turn he came to almost a full stop right in front of that Texas bookstore depository, excuse me. Whatever it was. And I got to thinking, what are the odds? And I know what got me thinking about that is they were talking on TV about how Lee Harvey Oswald had been really under a microscope from the CIA. They were following this guy constantly because they thought he was a real danger. Now, and this only really has just started coming out since, to Trump's credit, he released a lot of the files on the assassination. And the files on the assassination, according to this reporter, show a concerted effort by the CIA to cover up the degree that which they were following this man. And the reason that you put these two things together, here was a guy that the CIA knew was a threat. He was a weirdo, he was a wacko, he was dangerous. And yet this wacko is able to get himself a job in essentially an empty building where he could, there were a few other people working there, but it was empty. It didn't have office space and everything. People could walk all through wherever they wanted to. Gets himself a job a couple of months before Kennedy was shot. And he gets that job in the one spot on that entire route that Kennedy took where he had to come to a complete stop. And he came to it wasn't absolutely, it was like a 1 or 2 miles an hour stop right in front of the one place where he was right below a building, so that anybody sitting up there looking down where Kennedy was, it was almost a shot straight down. Nobody could miss that shot. Even Francois, my miserable dog who can't shoot to save his life, he's a terrible shot. Usually tries to shoot a pistol, but even he with the rifle couldn't have missed that shot. Right straight on top of Kennedy, coming to almost a complete dead stop right in front of a man the CIA had been following for years because they saw him as a real danger and a threat to this country, that he was a crazy kind of person who'd go off on the rails anytime, and who had been trained as a marksman in the Army. And it's like, so here's the route sends Kennedy along this route, and then it takes a right. It comes to that building and takes a left. So he's at almost a complete stop, right there, right at that same time. What are the odds that something like that could happen by coincidence? I don't believe it, and maybe we will never get to the bottom of this thing. But at some point in time, hopefully, somebody will find out Who was responsible for that route? Who allowed, even if Kennedy's people wanted him to be in a place where people could see him, there's no excuse for that route. There are plenty of other ways he could have gotten to where he was giving the speech, or not even given the speech. To have him travel a route that brings him to almost a dead stop right in front of a building, and a building that is, for all intents and purposes, empty, and then that man sitting up there with a rifle that the CIA it blows the mind. So I don't know what happened there. I knew Kennedy had a lot of enemies in the government, a lot of holdovers from the Eisenhower administration. He had put John Foster Dulles and Allen Dulles in charge of the State Department and the CIA. Allen Dulles was in charge of the CIA. The Dulles brothers hated Kennedy, as did Curtis LeMay and a host of others. They were furious at Kennedy because he had refused to bomb Cuba during the Cuban Missile Crisis. All these things are documented facts. J. Edgar Hoover hated Kennedy. You had all these people in positions of government. Talk about the deep state. That was the deep state. They were holdovers, and not from Eisenhower. I think Eisenhower was a good man. But he didn't know what these people were up to. He had no idea who was running the CIA and what they were doing in the CIA. He didn't know what Curtis LeMay was up to with the Air Force. And my dad hated Curtis LeMay because Curtis LeMay, my dad was a bombardier and navigator in World War II. Curtis LeMay was in his direct chain of command. He couldn't stand the man because he had ordered the firebombing of Dresden and killed hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. The only thing they were doing in Dresden during the war was holding some Americans prisoners and making Dresden dolls. But I digress, but not too far, because the concern is that I still live with, and of course I was alive and well during the Kennedy assassination and during the Eisenhower administration, it just bothers me that these things happen and they've never been explained. Someday, hopefully, we'll get to the bottom of this thing. In the meantime, his loss was a horrible loss for the country, and now we're stuck with this clown. I hate to call the President of the United States a clown, but he is a disaster for that position, and finally people are starting to catch on to him. He's losing support everywhere, including in his MAGA base, and it's about damn time. That's it. Thanks. Sorry to be so negative, but it just got me thinking. There are a lot of negative things going on, and we have to address them. We can't pretend they don't exist. We have to address them, and hopefully we can do something about them. Thanks.